Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Raw Man Podcast. I think this would be episode number 38 if we've got this number correctly, but this is a special episode, not in the normal time slot. Tonight we are going to be interviewing my boss, Dave Silverman, the president of American Atheists. Of course, I'm the state director, but he's the president of the whole thing. And you've probably seen him making a meme face against Bill O'Reilly on his show, and you've seen him against Hannity and a number of other people on Fox News. He's the atheist that they let on to Fox News when they want to get irritated.
Dave, they want to get beaten.
When they want to get beaten. As opposed to that, what that cup creature that seems to be like manufactured. That's a whole other animal we can talk about another time.
Yeah, that's a whole other show.
It's a whole other show.
All right, so Dave Silverman.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure, sir. And how have you been doing? It's been a while since I talked to you since last time.
It's been a while, and we've been busy at American Atheists. We've been doing a lot to establish the atheist voting bloc. We started the atheist voter program a little while ago, and what we're doing with that is trying to establish the atheist voting bloc once and for all by actually going out into the grassroots and getting people to go and actually visit see one-on-one candidates wearing atheist garb, wearing atheist pins, atheist buttons, atheist shirts, and asking atheist questions. Specifically things like, I'm an atheist and I'm concerned about the separation of church and state. I'm an atheist and I was wondering if you would have a qualified atheist in your cabinet if you were elected. I'm an atheist and I'm concerned about school prep. Anything that starts with I'm an atheist. Reason being, the intent is to get people to understand that the atheists are a voting bloc, get us in the conversation, make us part of the conversation, make it about us for once.
And you may not be aware of this, but my wife is working on a coalition here in Texas with the exact same purpose. You know that the right-wing Republicans always win out when the religious right always win out when they have the low voter turnout. This last election here in Texas was really disappointing. Today in our news, we had the Freedom from Religion Foundation had a display in the government that they put down in the basement rather than where all of the other nativity scenes and all of that were posted. And the governor ordered it removed because he said it was unconstitutional to mock police.
And we live in the Taliban era.
Exactly.
No, that offends beliefs. Hopefully that's going to be appealed. I'm sure the FFRF is all over that one.
Well, I'm going to leave that.
Any Lori and Dan will have a good time with that one.
Yeah, as I said, we're going to leave that today. We just saw it in the news today. But that's the kind of situation. We got this governor because of low voter turnout, because of so many people making the excuse. And this is the thing that irritates me to death. When they tell me that there's no point in voting. You know, it's a broken system. Both parties are the same. It doesn't matter who you vote for. Well, in this election, in this state, it would have made a huge freaking difference. And and because people didn't vote, yeah, their vote could have counted, would have counted, but it became a self-fulfilling prophecy that they did not vote, that they didn't participate, and now look what we're stuck with. So
and you know what, Art? It's really great, frankly, that you're doing the Get Out the Vote campaign, and that is probably the most important thing to do. But it's also very important to be seen as an atheist voter. It is important to inject atheism into this conversation for the very reason that you just said. Because of all of that infiltration of religion into our government, it needs a little atheism injected. And what I'm talking about is getting people to go up and actually see the candidates. And people think this is hard. It's not hard. You can do this. You can just go to a local rally, and there's usually one or two larger level people there. And if you go on the atheistvoter.org website, you can actually see where the presidential candidates are going to be near you. Sometimes they go to diners. Sometimes they go to other people's rallies. You can walk right up to them and ask them questions on the record with a recorder about atheism. And that's what we need to be doing. It's not just voting. Yes, we need to vote. And not getting other people out to vote. Yes, we need to do that. But also, we need to be seen. We need to be known as atheists. We need to be seen as atheists, and we need to be dealt with as atheists. It doesn't matter if we like their answer or if we don't. We have to be a part of the equation. We have to be a part of the system.
Let me
That's what atheist voters are about.
Let me jump on that with a small addition. When we did the first Unholy Trinity tour, it was in Amarillo, Texas. A month or so prior to the time we went there, they had a meeting of some of the candidates that were running for state positions, and they had a number of these guys up on stage. And one of the atheists in the audience asked all of these candidates in Texas how they would represent their atheist voters.
Perfect.
And the answer was, our constituents are Christian.
And when he said that, he lost every non-Christian vote in this constituency.
Yes.
And that's just fine.
And the issue that we're having, the issue that we're having with that is that we represent like 20% of this state at a minimum. So why are we not being represented? Why do we have like every police department every other week we hear that they're putting crosses on their cars or they're putting biblical slogans on their police cars, right?
Yeah.
In addition to everything else that they do, you know.
Yes.
So why do we have all of this religious legislation? Of course, Texas is notorious for this sort of thing. We've got an infamous Board of Education, all of this kind of thing going on for years and years. Why do we get no respect when we represent such a large degree of the voters in this state? So I didn't want to make this about Texas. I'm just throwing in my 2 cents to follow in about the atheist voter block. I'm completely behind you there.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, and it's important that you talk about this because so many atheists in this country are closeted. We don't have any power. And it's something that we really have to understand that 90%, and I make this case in Fighting God, which is the book that we're going to talk about pretty soon, that we're between 25 and 30% of this country right now. Okay, atheists in this country right now between 25 and 30%. I can defend that very aggressive number. I know it's aggressive, but I can also defend it. What the polls say is closer to 3%. Okay, which is totally wrong. Now, my point is that 90% of the atheists in this country don't call themselves atheists. 90% of the atheists in this country don't call themselves atheists. So if we want to increase our power and our size by tenfold, all we have to do is start telling the truth. What would the polls in Texas look like if the atheists who call themselves atheists, if every atheist called themselves an atheist and didn't muck around with wrong words and words that people don't understand, agnostic, humanist, bright, secular Jew, lapsed Catholic, all that crap, if people would just use the word atheist, think of how we could change the country, change Texas, change everything. And we can do the whole thing without converting a single person. All we have to do is get the atheists who are not calling themselves atheists to call themselves atheists. We increase our power and our position tenfold overnight.
Now, you know I've been on a soapbox about this for a long time, that most of the atheists in this country call themselves agnostic, or that virtually everybody who calls themselves agnostic
they call themselves
atheist.
anything other than atheist.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's quite a large number of them that identify as Christian, which is a bizarre thing. I mean, they'll call themselves
22%.
Christian, and then they'll still admit that they don't believe in God, but still call themselves Methodist.
And what is that? That is the scam of religion, convincing you that it is so good to call yourself a member of the con that even when you dismiss the con, you still feel compelled to support the con by identifying with it. Think about how deep that brainwashing is. Think about the concept of the term lapsed Catholic for a second. They can't even drop the Catholic word. They can't drop it. Those secular Jews, same thing. These are atheists, who call themselves one thing or another. I know not all lapsed Catholics are atheists, but my point is that a lot of them are, and they're clinging to these labels because the purveyors of those scams have convinced them that it's so important to protect that label that even when they disagree with it, even when they dismiss its precepts entirely, they can't dismiss the name. That is brainwashing. That is something that we need to
Well, they can't dismiss the name, and they can't accept the name of atheism and atheist because it has such a bad stigma. That's another thing we have to
very good point, Mark.
Stigma of the word. So it's not just a fighting the label that we keep. It's not accepting the label that we are.
And here's another thing.
That's a really good point, Mark. And the question is, who gives atheism the bad name? Oh, look, it's the same people who give their religion the good name.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, look, it's all a part of the big scam. They're bad, we're good. It's imperative for you to call yourself one of us, even if you completely dismiss us, because if you don't, you'll be bad, even though you completely agree with them.
Now, one of the reasons that I'm so inspired to follow the Atheist Out campaign is because I, for 15 years, identified as an agnostic because I had been lied to about what an atheist is. I've been sold the same lie that Carl Sagan unfortunately bought into, where he said that Carl Sagan said that an atheist is someone who knows there's no God. An atheist is someone who knows more than I do. But that's not what an atheist is. And so I have to tell everybody. I said, a belief is a conviction. A lack of belief is a lack of conviction. So if you're not convinced that an actual deity really exists, then you're atheist. Even if you identify as an agnostic, even if you refuse to use the word atheist, if you don't believe in a God, you're atheist. Regardless
That's exactly what is in Chapter 1 of Fighting God, is what an atheist is. Chapter 1, you might be an atheist if you don't have a belief in God. If you don't have a belief in God and you absolutely positively hate the word atheist, you're an atheist. and we have to get through that, and we have to get past all that. And we have this, Mark was right. We have this stigma placed against us by religion. All religions en masse place a stigma against atheism, and they all place their virtual claws into people and tell them that they need to stick with it, even if they don't agree with it. Just
we stigmatize ourselves too, Dave.
Secular Judaism.
We stigmatize ourselves too, because how many times have you seen in social media or at a conference about how people will say, well, these atheists, quote unquote, these atheists or those atheists, I don't agree with the way they go about it, and because of that, they choose to go with another label because they don't like how some atheists are. I always make the argument that everybody's agnostic. You're as much agnostic as Billy Graham, because nobody fucking knows. It's what do you believe?
And that's what makes it a useless term.
Right, exactly. It is an absolutely useless term. There's only theists and atheists. That's all there is. And if you don't believe in God, you're an atheist, even if you don't agree with every other atheist on the planet. That doesn't mean you get to throw away that label.
One of my oldest and dearest friends criticized another of my friends who came out as atheist, saying that you can't really be an atheist because you can't know for certain that there's no God. And so I had to jump on it into an argument with my oldest friend, saying, but you don't believe in a God, so that makes you atheist. And he says, no, I'm not convinced that there's a God, but I'm not convinced there's not one either. And I'm like, that's the most bullshit excuse. That still means you're not convinced. It still means you do not believe in a God. And he's insisting that it has to be a positive belief in a not God, as if that makes any sense.
Yes, of course, and that's why you have to have a positive belief, and you not just positive belief, but you actually have absolute proof in order to say you definitely don't believe in Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny or the four-horned Easter Bunny, which I just made up in my mind right now. You can't prove that's not there because it's completely undetectable. So I guess you're agnostic about it, even though I just made it up. Even though I say I just made it up, maybe I'm lying. You can't prove it's not there because it's completely undetectable. So you must be agnostic about the four-horned. What did I say it was? A four-horned unicorn? That I just
son of a bitch, Dave. You just blew everything up.
I just totally blew everything up, man. And I'll tell you something. It's you better respect because.
Dave just manufactured a four-horned Easter Bunny, and immediately thereafter, he manufactured a four-horned unicorn. How many more things are you going to get? We have to have conclusive proof to disprove.
A four-horned unicorn is such an oxymoron.
Yes, a four-horned unicorn. Don't doubt my faith. If you doubt my faith, you insult my God, and that's illegal in Texas.
We're gonna have to put your display in the basement.
Yeah, go think. Just figure that they put it in the basement. Yeah, they give us the thing that we'll put up the display and everything in the basement.
Yeah.
How fair is that? So yeah, I'm completely in with the atheist voting and the atheist out, and people getting to understand that you understand what the word asymmetrical means, you understand what the word apolitical means. Well, when it gets to atheist, it's the same thing. It's not a positive belief. It's not absolute knowledge. There is no middle of the fence. You're either convinced or you're not, and there is no agnostic middle position. there's no way to avoid this fight. You know,
That's right. And it's important for you to understand that the concept of the false definition of atheism and agnosticism is very, very beneficial to religion because it is logically inconsistent. If atheism actually requires Gnosticism in order to be true, then it's logically inconsistent. It behooves religion to promote those wrong definitions, and we need to understand that. They benefit by our division, and so they sow division. And yes, I do believe that a lot of it is very, very deliberate, because I've seen a lot of people, a lot of preachers say things deliberately wrong to benefit themselves and to benefit their argument. And when they pull in that whole you can't logically be an atheist, you must be an agnostic, that's intentional bullshit. That's wrong, and you got to call them right out on it, because it's not about agnosticism is not on the same continuum as atheism. It's not the same thing. Atheism does not require absolute knowledge of the universe any more than being sure that there's no four-horned unicorn requires no absolute knowledge of the universe. We don't need absolute knowledge in order to be without a religion, without a faith, without a theism. And it's completely logical if you use the correct definitions. If you use the wrong definitions, it's not logical, and that's why religion often pushes the wrong definitions deliberately.
And here's another aspect of that. You know, my friend who refuses to admit that he's an atheist in denial, as so many of them are.
So many.
The one that says that, you know, he's not convinced that there's not a God either. The theism aspect, you know, he says, well, I believe there's something. Well, okay, great. There was a poll of scientists in the American Association of Advancement of Science, you know, I think, or some similar organization. I can't remember exactly. But the interesting thing about this poll was that the number of scientists who said that they don't believe in a God, but they do believe in a higher power, and they put the higher power above a God. So what the hell is a God?
Yeah.
Now, as I've argued for a long time, if you look at everybody's gods, I mean, you've got gods that millions of people have worshipped for thousands of years. You can't just discount them to put in a special definition that only applies to your version of God. So you have to have a definition that includes everybody's gods. And if you include everybody's gods, including the Christian Judeo-Islamic God, then what you get is an magical, anthropomorphic immortal. That's what it is. You can kill the body, but it just keeps coming back. It's either like Zeus, where it keeps coming back in a different animal form, or it's like Jesus or Prometheus or whatever. You can kill the body, and then it just or Dionysus would be a better example. They just keep coming back. So it's a magical, anthropomorphic immortal. If that's what you believe in, then you're a theist. But if you tell me that you believe there's something, well, fucking Einstein believed in something, but he was an atheist, as was Spinoza and everybody else. So if the something you believe in, if it's the force, for example, then that's your higher power, but the force is not a deity, because it's not magical, it's not anthropomorphic, and well, it's immortal because there's no part of it that could die, but it doesn't fit all the description. So it's not a god. So when you tell me that you believe in something, do you believe in a deity? You know, that's the part of the.
You believe in a supernatural intelligence.
Right, because
that's what I ask
say
you. You believe in an intelligence, a thinking intelligence that is above and beyond the laws of physics and mathematics which govern the universe. Is that what your something is? Is it alive? Is it thinking? And is it supernatural? That's what I always ask people when they say, I believe in something. I believe in all of us. I believe in a force. Is it conscience? Is it conscious? And is it thinking? And is it supernatural? And they say no. And I say, you're an atheist.
Right.
Because that's what they are.
Because they try to steal all the very human things about human connection.
And look at what they're doing. They're trying to make themselves look religious. They're trying to make themselves look religious because religion has told them that it's good to be religious and it's bad to be not religious. So they're holding on to it. Their intellect is shedding it and shedding it and shedding it, but their emotional bond is holding on. No, I'm not completely losing religion, even though I have absolutely no supernatural beliefs. They're clawing onto it because they cannot lose the theism, or at least they cannot lose the name or the idea of the theism, even if it disgusts them.
Somebody asked me if I ever expected there to be an atheist president in this country, and I said, well, I hope to vote for one in a few months, but it's not somebody who identifies as an atheist, which for the moment is fine with me. If you call yourself a cultural Jew, it means essentially the same thing.
It means exactly the same thing. It means exactly the same thing. It means It means Bernie Sanders is an atheist, and we should be calling him that, or at least he should be calling himself that, if he is. He hasn't used the word secular. He calls himself non-religious, a non-religious Jew. So that's a 99% chance, in my opinion, that we're talking about Mr. Atheist up there. And there's another atheist up there, in my opinion, and he's on the other side. And he is the guy who said, the Bible is my favorite book, but he couldn't name a single verse. He didn't know John 3:16. He didn't know Genesis 1. He didn't know Genesis 1. And he said the Bible is his favorite verse. I smell a liar. I smell an atheist. And one of the things that we have to talk about and I talk about this in Fighting God, is that we have to come to terms with the fact that some atheists are terrible people. Some of them are liars. Some of them con people for a living. Some people are politicians. And some of them are preachers. And they're conning people for a living. And you can see it by their actions. You can see it by what they do. And you can see it by the fact that they wouldn't know the Bible if it bit them on the ass. Do I know if he's an atheist or not? No. But I can tell you something else. I can tell you that if you went back 10 years, 15 years to the presidential election back in 2000, and there was a person who was a non-religious Jew, they would have been routed out by the religious right. It would be a thing. If a person got up on the Republican platform and couldn't name a Bible verse, they would not be on the roster for very long.
Hey, Dave,
I think that what we are seeing here between it's not just that we have what is apparently two atheists running for president. It's apparently they're running for president, and their lack of religion is not hurting them one bit, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, Mark, you keep trying to jump into the conversation.
Yeah, I have a question.
I think your volume may be too low. We're not hearing you.
Oh, can you hear me right now?
I can hear you now that I'm listening, but I mean, when Dave's speaking, you just kind of...
Well, I didn't want to interrupt, but I did want to try to get this in. I don't want to take up the whole show, but we do have a few questions coming in from people that are watching live right now. We got a couple hundred live viewers. One person says, can Dave address this question? Does a person who claims all gods are false or there is no God have any burden of justification?
No. And the reason why, and I'm sorry, this was a question for Dave. I'll back out.
That's okay.
Go ahead, you handle it. This is an easy one.
The reason why is because it's Hitchens' razor, that which is asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence.
No. Yeah, I mean, we don't need to have positive proof for something that goes against everything that we as a society know to be true. Okay?
Right.
If I don't have to have positive proof that there is no four-horned unicorn. I don't have to have positive proof because it goes against everything that we know to be true. It can be dismissed without evidence, just as you said. We don't need to have a full knowledge of the universe to dismiss something. Especially when that dismissal goes against the proposed entity, the proposed thing, actually goes against everything that we know to be true as a society, like a invisible, undetectable four-horned unicorn that's hovering above my head right now. You can't prove it's not there.
And the argument that you have...
know everything. You can't prove it's not there. Even if I tell you, listen, I just created it during this show, and I'm imagining the whole thing, that's not proof positive that it's not there. I could be lying and testing you. So do you need proof positive that it's not there in order to say, Dave, it's not there? No, you don't. And I submit that anytime somebody is talking about a four-horned unicorn or anything else with absolutely, positively no supporting proof at all that goes against all the established laws of physics, they should all be treated the same way. Dismissed without evidence.
And this is important to throw in. You don't have to have all knowledge, right? You don't have to be omniscient to smell bullshit.
No, you're right. That's what James Randi said about it's not about what we don't know that shows what's true and what isn't true. It is what we do know. You say, how many dice can I hold in my hand? You know that a guess of 5 is a lot more reasonable than a guess of 50,000. Doesn't mean you can't have to prove you can't hold 50,000 dice in your hand to show that that's not logical.
This reminds me of a question.
It's really important. It's really important that questions like this get answered, you know, in a large stadium so that people can understand what bullshit that question is, and how it gets in our way as a movement. When we try to trip each other up, instead of actually looking at it and doing the research and learning on ourselves, and actually coming to the conclusion and actually understanding that you don't need positive proof to call yourself an atheist. You absolutely don't need omniscience to say with certainty there is no God.
And that's another point I want to bring up, because when I first heard of you and I hadn't yet met you, I remember giving a presentation that actually opposed your billboard program, because I was of the perspective of, you know, what we can and cannot say we actually know, and I was being very agnostic about this. And then somebody else later on corrected me that yes, I can say that I know that there's no God for exactly the same reason and in exactly the same way that I can say that I know that there's no Loch Ness monster, that there's no alien reptiles disguised as humans that are running the Illuminati. All of these absurdities that are unsupported by anything that I know don't exist. God is in the same exact category. Now, yes. I wouldn't say that I don't know how to say that I'm not an agnostic atheist, but it wouldn't make sense to say that I was a Gnostic atheist either, because I know what Gnostic means. But it is fair to say that I know that there's no God for the same reason.
Yes.
You know. And
we have no. The word no. The word no is in the English language for a reason, because we can know things, and we don't have to know everything in the universe in order to know a thing. I'm holding a coffee cup. I know this. I don't have to know everything in the universe to know that this is a coffee cup. I'm certain of it. I don't have to know everything in the universe to say I'm certain. But when it comes to religion, when it comes to the invisible man in the sky, we take a step back. We say, no, we can't know that that's not there. We can know there's no Santa Claus. We can know there's no four-horned, invisible, undetectable unicorn. But we can't know there is no God, because why? Well,
those are just excuses.
There's no reason. There's no reason. Why do we protect religion? We protect religion because religion tells us to protect it. Religion puts this in our mind, and it's awful, and it's there. And it sounds insidious, but the evidence is very clear. We have a resistance to dismissing religion, and it's societal, and it's wrong. And we shouldn't put up protections, and we shouldn't hedge our bets. We shouldn't say that we're agnostic about God if we don't say that we're agnostic about Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and the Tooth Fairy.
Well, you know,
that's why I would never use the word agnostic, and I suggest that everybody who calls himself agnostic find a different term, because nobody knows what it means, and it doesn't actually mean anything at all.
Yeah, I used to identify as an agnostic pagan for Christ for the longest time before I knew. Really, go ahead, Mark.
No, I just want to kind of keep the. I mean, we could go back and forth and talk about our favorite subject, about how agnostic isn't a term we should use and how atheists need to talk out. But we obviously want to talk about your book and what's going on in it. You started out with why we need to use the term atheist, and that you are an atheist if you don't believe in God, whether you say you are one or not. What other kind of subjects do you cover in your book?
Well, the main purpose of the book is to talk about Firebrand atheism. And that's the kind of atheism that I'm famous for, the in-your-face, active atheism. And, you know, a lot of people inside the movement and outside the movement, they have a very wrong opinion of what Firebrand atheism is. And, it's a matter of simply telling the truth and being compassionate and owning that you're right. And if we do that, we understand that it's our responsibility to speak the truth. It's our responsibility not only to ourselves and to the people listening, but to everybody else in this country, religious or non-religious. It is the atheist's responsibility to speak out, to be active, to call themselves atheists by name, by word, and not hedge your bets and not pull back. It is our patriotic duty to call yourself an atheist. It is our humanistic responsibility to call ourselves atheists. In fact, I say it is much, much more humanistic to call yourself an atheist than it is to call yourself a humanist. Because, one of the things that I have in my book, data. Lots and lots of independent quantitative data. I like data. And in this country, right now, approximately 90% of the people understand what an atheist is, and approximately 90% of the people do not understand what a humanist is. So when you call yourself a humanist or a free thinker or any of those other bullshit words, you're not delivering the correct message 90% of the time. And I submit that's not honest, and that's not ethical, and that's not helping anyone. It's making it easier for you because you don't have to deal with a potential face full of conflict, but it's not making the world a better place. It's not taking heat for the next person who needs the heat taken off him. You're not doing anything for those people who can't come out. If you're hiding behind words, if you're hiding behind words that don't convey atheism. And you know what? Some people tell me that, you know what, those other words are more acceptable than atheists. Well, guess why? It's because they're less understood to be atheistic. The more acceptable terms are the least understood terms.
So as
it's not about the term. It's about the atheism. And we need to take it. And it's our job to take it. It's our duty as humans, it's our duty as Americans, and it's our duty as humanists to take on the word and use it and come out of the closet. And by the way, what happens when you do? Well, I have data, lots and lots of data in Fighting God. And it talks about the efficacy of Firebrand tactics, how we use Firebrand tactics to really, literally change this country in measurable, quantifiable ways. Literally quantifiable ways. I can show you that in Fighting God. And that's what Fighting God is all about. It's not about telling you why atheism is correct. It's not about I'm going to tell you how to change or how to debate or how to change somebody's mind. Fighting God is about you getting up, you doing something, and you actually making a change for yourself and for this country because it's the right thing to do, it's the ethical thing to do, it's the moral thing to do. So Fighting God will get you up and pumped. At least that's what I hope.
Poised, is the book kind of written to the person that is an atheist but is not using that term? Is that kind of who you wrote it for, that group?
That's 90% of the population, so yes. 90% of the atheists in this country don't call themselves atheists.
No, that's a fact.
I'm yelling at them, okay? And then you got 10% of the atheist population that does call themselves atheists, and I'm yelling at them to stay focused and to get motivated because, guess what? We can actually win this fight. We can and will win this fight, and in fact, we are winning this fight. And then the other target market, the third target market, is the theist, not because my book will convert them, but because my book will make them understand us. The theist who watches Fox News, who thinks the atheists are evil, who thinks we're just here to cause trouble. Anybody, the theist who doesn't like atheists, needs to read Fighting God because they will understand what we're doing and why, and understand that not only are we everywhere, but we're actually pretty nice people, very compassionate people, and very caring, and very, hopefully, honest and ethical.
I got to throw in one other thing. You know, we were talking about, you know, how I want to mention about conviction. You know, that religious believers will say, well, I know that there's no God. This is why I say the thing about if you can't show it, then you don't know it, because we have Hitchens' razor that we can fall on for the lack of evidence. But otherwise, if you're going to make a positive claim, you have to provide the positive evidence for it. And then, I was lied to that atheists believe in nothing. Well, the only truth to that statement is that we don't believe in anything on faith, or at least as this would be the epistemists. I know atheists who are not skeptics, I'm sorry to say. I know atheists who are not humanists, who are not necessarily free thinkers. Just because you don't believe in a God doesn't mean that you are an educated, science-minded, intellectual. You know, you have to. It would be better if we all were, but that's not the case. Now, just because you say you believe in God doesn't mean you necessarily even believe in God. I know so many people who proudly profess that they are Christian, who are felony criminals, who are drug addicted, fornicators, and have never cracked open a Bible and have not the first clue what the Christian creed is. You just call yourself a Christian so that you can get out of that fight. You don't even know what the hell that means.
Yeah, posers. And you can tell posers as well by just asking them if they've read their Bibles, because I maintain that, I mean, if it came out there was a new Hitchens book out. In fact, I just saw a new Hitchens book out. I'm going to read it because it's interesting and I like Christopher Hitchens. And if I owned a book that I thought was written by the immortal ruler of the universe, really, I'd read that sucker. I would.
That's a good point.
Okay, I mean, it's written by the immortal ruler of the universe, and you can't be bothered to flip through a couple pages. No, you are a poser, my friend. You don't believe it. I'm sorry. I do not believe that literate people who don't read their Bibles are actual believers. I believe they are very, very afraid of what they will see when they look inside. And I challenge them on it whenever I see them. Whenever I meet another Christian or another Jew or another Muslim who hasn't read their holy book, who doesn't understand the meaning, who can't find Matthew in the Bible, anybody who can't, oh, I don't know, name a single verse in the Bible, I don't think they're real Christians at all, my friend. I think they're pulling my chain, and I think they're full of crap, and I call them on it because those people are probably atheists.
Well, that would be one way of putting
Speculating,
it.
but yes.
The people that I'm talking about, I'm sure they believe that there's a God.
Yeah.
They have no idea
that's
of anything else.
Maybe they believe in some God, but they don't believe in their God. Go ahead.
Well, that's the thing. It's just like you said. Okay, I understand why they don't open the Bible, because they could never understand a word of it. They would never be able to read a single page of the thing. But it's like you said, if God wrote it, then there would be some substance there, and that was the biggest problem that I had when I was a 12-year-old boy, and I read the Bible because I was told that God is love, and then when you read, and that God wrote the Bible is God's word, and when you read the Bible, you're going to get divine wisdom. But anybody that's ever opened the damn thing realizes immediately this is not divine wisdom.
Yes.
It's not wisdom of any sort.
Atheism's biggest problem is that Christians don't read their Bibles.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's our biggest problem. If we could get all the Christians, these so-called Christians, to read their Bibles, we would win the war overnight. Because all they have to do is open it up and see what they fear, which is that it's full of crap, which is that it's a completely illegible document or irreadable document.
I find it amusing how many Christians have never heard of a chick tract.
Yeah.
You know, what atheist doesn't know that there's a chick tract, right?
Yeah.
I can't get Christians to watch the Trinity Broadcast Network. I can't get them to watch the Christian Coalition, to watch the shows by the 700 Club or the PTL Club when that was a thing. I can't get them to read or look at anything that the Radical Fringe is doing. And the Radical Fringe is the one that's leading the entire movement. Mainstream Christians do not have anything in common with the extremists that you hear the most from, but these people will not acknowledge. No, what Christian listens to Pat fucking Robertson, right? I mean, you can use the No True Scotsman on every other Christian but yourself until you become the only true Christian there is the way that logic seems to work.
Yeah.
But I can't get them to watch this because they don't want to know. They don't want to realize that Pat Robertson told his 30,000 some odd followers to kill homosexuals where you find them. And he said this on national TV in 1994. Why does nobody remember this? I don't know.
They don't want to deal with the fact that they're wrong. They don't want to deal with the fact that they're wrong. They don't want to deal with the fact that their parents were wrong and that their grandparents were wrong. They don't want to deal with the fact that their entire family is the victim of a con because they think it's a shame. But really it's not, because it's the largest scam in the history of the world. I mean, my mother was a believer. My great-grandmother used to believe in the evil eye. That didn't make her stupid. They made her a victim of a scam. And there's a lot of scams that are making a lot of victims, and that scam is being perpetuated by people who will not leave the scam. So these people who don't act Christian, don't care about Christianity, but call themselves Christian, are perpetuating the lie and the scam by paying money to a church, sending their kids to that church, them calling themselves Christian, them being brainwashed, and really nobody even believes it. But they're doing it anyways because they're victims of this concept that it's bad to be an atheist.
Unfortunately, it's like within politics and within religious communities, the more fearful the message, the louder it is. The very conservative politically are the loudest, the very fundamentalist religion are the loudest. The more liberal you are, for the most part, the less politically charged you are and the less loud you are about your advocacy. I don't understand why that's the case, but it seems to be the case, where if you ask in a quiet moment, everybody in the United States, if you could do that, most of them are on the liberal side of the spectrum, if not moderate. But the loudest people are on the right. And that's how it gets into the bloodstream of the media, and that's That's unfortunate. That's what we have to battle against.
And that is called, and there's a phenomenon that's going on there that I actually also talk about in Fighting God, which is called shifting the Overton window. Now, the Overton window is an imaginary window of things that are acceptable to talk about in polite society. And that moves in one way or another depending on how it's pushed and how it's evolved. And one way to move the Overton window is to go outside the Overton window and pull. And I admit that I have done this. You know, this is one of the main things that American Atheists has done. If you remember our You Know It's a Myth billboard back in 2010, that was outside the Overton window. And so the news was all over it. We had the news in 9 different countries all over it. But since then, if we put another You Know It's a Myth billboard up, it wouldn't really get too much traction because we actually pulled that into the realm of talking. And when you're talking about the extreme right, when they go on the news, they pull that Overton window. And when no one else is talking, when no one else is pulling the other side, that window shifts. Think again about Mitt Romney. In the first time he was a presidential candidate, he was on the fringe because he was a Mormon. Then later on, he was the main contender. That moves. And it's a very important thing that we pay attention to what is inside that window and who is pulling in one direction. When you've got only the religious right screaming, and they're the only ones going on the news, that window is going to get pulled their way. And the things that they're talking about are going to get made more and more normal. And that's something that we have to counteract. That's something that we have to pull back. That's something where atheists like us have to scream a lot louder and get on the news a lot more and raise a lot more money, yes. And we have to do that in order to pull that window back so that we can have a more normal society. This is why atheist activism is humanistic and it's patriotic. Because we are saving the country from the religious right, quite literally. We are saving the country from religious right by being loud and proud atheists.
And most of what we're talking about, most of the strategy about like misrepresenting the word atheist and all of this is all on projecting the burden of proof. Because faith-based beliefs, of course, can't bear any burden of proof. So that's why they have to turn it into where atheism becomes a positive belief in believing in nothing, as if we were all Zen nihilists or something like that. You know, they want to push everything onto us because they can't bear anything on themselves. And so our reaction to that is to say that we are not convinced. That's what it is. That's what not believing is. It doesn't mean believing in nothing. It means not convinced. I don't believe, and therefore you haven't met the burden of proof. You're supposed to give me something to convince me, and you ain't got shit.
And the way you know is who's got the burden of proof is what is going with or against what we know to be true. That's how you know what has to be proven. If you've got a list of things that we know to be true, and somebody comes up and says, I got something that disproves that's different, that's outside of what we know to be true, they got to prove it. You don't have to disprove it. They got to prove it if it's outside of all the things that we know to be true, that which can be dismissed without evidence.
Right. You're absolutely right. It's kind of the old, you can't prove I don't have a baseball behind my back thing. You know, what you were saying about being Firebrand and how important that is, I know that you and I have had this conversation, and I have this conversation all the time in defense of Aaron and Dave and the people that are real firebranding like you guys, because everybody that knows this show and knows Shannon and I, they know that we're not really firebrand. We understand that it's important. We know that what you do and what American Atheists does is important. I'm a Silver Life member of American Atheists because I understand that it's an important thing.
Thank you very much.
But because it just doesn't fit my life, and I am proud to say I'm an atheist, but I have other things that I am more passionate about working on in the community. I always have to go to bat and say, I'm not a firebrand, but I love them, and I understand their mission, and I think it's important for people that don't necessarily want to engage in that or don't have the passion to engage in that to still understand that that's an important tool. And moving the Overton window, as you said, is something that Firebrand atheism does, and it's something that we really need.
And the other side of that is also true. As I also say in Fighting God, it takes all of us.
Right.
There's absolutely nothing in Fighting God that says we all have to be Firebrand. I am making the position that it's a good choice to do. But I completely accept and expect a lot of dissent among the atheist group because we're a broad group. The only thing that holds atheists together is our lack of belief in a deity. So we're a very broad group. In fact, we're as broad as a group can be, period, because we only have one thing, one facet joining us all. We only have one commonality, the lack of belief in a God. So we're about as broad can get as far as a movement is concerned, and that means that the Firebrands gotta love the diplomats.
Yeah.
And you know what? You guys have your place, and it's important for you. And actually, it's really important because in the long term, you guys are gonna win. That's right. You guys are gonna win, and you guys are gonna win because you're gonna be there after we Firebrands blaze the trail. You guys are gonna come in and move in, may take the room that's made for you, and you guys are going to take over. And the nice guy atheists are going to win.
I've often said that the diplomatic atheists can't make any headway because they need a firebrand to blaze that trail or bust down that wall before anybody will even hear the diplomatic atheists.
Exactly. We shift the Overton window, the nice guys talk.
You know, I've had this conversation with theists. I mean, people, again, you guys know I roll in a group of very liberal theists, and I've had this conversation where they'll say things like, where people I know at one point will say something about Silverman and things that he said and how they didn't agree with that stuff, and then a year later, because the Overton window's been moved, they're like, you know, he's making a lot of good points about things, and that's the kind of thing that is nice about Firebrand is, like you said, once something becomes the norm, like the "you know it's a myth" billboard, then everybody can say that because it's not a big fucking deal anymore because we've already done it.
Let me give you an example of the trailer on that. Like the gay rights movement, for example, 10 years ago, when you promote the idea of gay marriage, you had minimal support. I mean, you had less. You had a minority. Was that? I mean, something like 46% of people supported that there should be legal gay marriage, and in the course of a decade. Well, now you've got a majority vote, and of course it becomes, you know, now it's become legal across the nation. But it wasn't always that way. I mean, it was done not very long ago that the majority of people were actually against that. I think that's what Dave is talking about right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that window was shifted because of activism. That window was not shifted because people sat back and said, "Oh, we're never going to win." That window was not shifted because people sat back and said, "Well, there's a lot more straight people than there are gay people, so we'll never win." That window was not shifted because a lot of people said, "Well, we don't want to piss off the homophobes by asserting our independence, by taking our place at the table." That window was shifted by activism. Firebrand activism on the part of the LGBT rights movement, and they did a fantastic job. Oh, and if you look back at the civil rights movement, if you look back at the women's lib movement, you'll see the exact same model. This is the model that works. This functions. And this is what we're going to use. This is what we are using, have used, and this is what we will be winning this war with. And yes, we will be winning this war, and we will be winning this war in our lifetimes. Watch and see. We're going to do great.
If there was some way for us to all get together and you know and share this kind of common moment, if we just had an event like that.
If only we had some sort of a big rally, a rally, maybe a rally about reasonable things. So you know what, Aaron? I don't know if you know this, but back in 2012, there was a Reason rally. Did you know that? Were you there? We had a Reason rally, and we had 30,000 people in the Mall of Washington, D.C., and it was awesome, and it was rainy, and it was cold, and my face was smiling so hard that it hurt for days. And then the wonderful news is that we are doing it again, it should be known that there will be no American Atheist Convention in 2016. We canceled our convention, as did most other organizations, because all eyes to the Reason rally, June 4th, 2016. It's a Saturday. It's in June, so it's going to be beautiful and hopefully much warmer than it was in March.
Yeah, I got to say I'm impressed by that, by the number of groups, not just American Atheists, but a number of other groups too that have also canceled their conventions so that they would not draw attention or finances from the Reason rally.
It's really a beautiful show of solidarity that we're seeing. So many organizations are canceling it, and we're doing the Reason rally differently this year. One of the things that we did, and I'll just say we did wrong for Reason Rally 1, is that we had the Reason Rally and that was it. And then all the other organizations did their own things for fundraisers and for for dinners and stuff like that. We're not doing that this year. This year we're having one fundraising dinner for the Reason Rally Coalition, one Reason Rally, one after party, and the day after the Reason Rally, a mini convention, all to benefit the Reason Rally Coalition, which benefits the movement on the whole. So it's a really solid. I don't want to use a sexist term. Is there a non-sexist term for fraternalistic? Anyways, it's a close-knit group, a close-knit organization, a close-knit movement, and I think it's going to be fantastic. Now, I will tell you that this year we do have some speakers that are confirmed, but I cannot tell them yet because I am bound. But it is going to be a bigger budget event. I can tell you that. It's going to be a larger event, and we are expecting far more than 30,000 people this time. And I think it's going to be it's going to be an epic event. And there are people right now who have had their lives changed at Reason Rally 1 because it's such an amazing experience to be. I mean, I remember when I first went into a first room when there were 200 atheists present. Okay, I remember first walking into a room with 200 atheists. This was back in 1996, and that was a huge event for me, and that was a huge thing for me. Now think about 50,000 people. Think about 50,000 atheists. All of us smiling, all of us laughing, all of us cheering, listening to the best we have to offer, and having a fantastic time. Think of how that experience will be. June 4th, 2016, Washington, D.C., reasonrally.org. No atheist convention is going to compare to this. So everybody's got to come.
So let me ask you real quick. I mean, the last Reason Rally was done on it was a one-day event. It was like it was like a 6 or 8 hour presentation on the stage at the National Mall in the rain, and everybody's most notable people were there. And Mark raised his hand when you mentioned that people had their lives changed at that event. And Mark raised his hand. I want to hear how did your life get changed, Mark?
I mean, I've told this story multiple times, and I was a life member of American Atheists. I have been for a long time, as I mentioned before. But up until Reason Rally came and the American Atheists Convention came in D.C. the same year, I wasn't an activist at all. I was a financial supporter, and that was it, really. But I went to Reason Rally, and Shannon and I, who were dating at the time, we weren't engaged to be married or anything at the time, we went, and we left, and we thought right away, we were like, we need to do something. And what is no one doing? Where is there a void? And ultimately we came up with the idea of Be Secular, a company that can do different things that nonprofits can't do by law. So we decided to create a company and try to put money into the community via a different way other than fundraising. And Dave was the first person I contacted. He was the first person that I asked about supporting it, and they were the first affiliate for Be Secular.
Absolutely thrilled to do it too. Since then we've put, I think we're somewhere in the $8,000 or $9,000 back into the movement just from Be Secular items, not including money that we've raised on side things. We raised $2,000 for Foundation Beyond Belief, raised about $1,000 for Recovery from Religion and Foundation Beyond Belief another time. So these things are things that all came from Reason Rally making an impact on us. Shannon and I's activism and Be Secular were spawned because of Reason Rally.
Wow. Outstanding.
Thank you, Mark.
So how is this Reason Rally going to differ from last time?
I think the most important detail that I can give you right now is bigger budget. Okay, I'm not permitted to give names. We have exciting names coming. I can't give them out yet, but you will find out. But the important thing to remember is bigger budget. We've got people coming in that cost money, and that's going to be fantastic. And we're going to have a band, maybe even 2 bands, and I really wish I could spill some beans to you, Aaron, but the big bean that I want to spill is bigger budget, and that means a lot.
Okay, and then I just want to bring up the last time I didn't get backstage passes.
I don't think you're going to get backstage passes this time either. I think, if I remember correctly, you did get VIP seating, though. Did you not, Aaron?
I did, but I thought VIP.
Yeah, I thought. Who gave you the VIP seating? How did that happen?
Just so you know, viewers and listeners, do not write the Ramen podcast and ask for VIP seating.
Yes,
that's not going to happen.
Okay, fine, be that way.
So billboards are up. Billboards are fun. Do we have time to talk about billboards?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because the one more thing I wanted to talk about in Fighting God was our billboards. And the billboards are a great example of Firebrand atheism because of how we use truth and how we use that Overton window to really multiply what we do. Going back to, it's a myth. We knew it was outside the Overton window. We don't want it to be so bad that it's really offensive, but we want it to be outside that window for a very specific reason. Our first target market is the press. That's what we want. I don't care about the 5-second rule, the 7-second rule. I don't care about any of that stuff that normally goes into a billboard. I care about the press. And we give them the graphic, and the graphic has our name on it, and the graphic has our website on it, and we tell them that they can't clip the graphic or cover it up in any way. So we put the billboards up to get the press to talk about it. And we put up, it's a myth, and then we went a little bit farther, it's a scam, and then we went a little bit farther, there are no gods, we know you're right. Then keep the merry, dump the myth. Who needs Christ in Christmas? Nobody. That was great because we actually had a state senator try and revoke our 501c3 status and call us like Hitler, compare us to Hitler in the news because of a billboard. And then he threatened to take away our 501c3 status. So I took the exact same billboard because I was so afraid and put it in his district right near his office just to let him know that we weren't afraid. And this year, last year we did Dear Santa Claus, a little girl, Dear Santa, all I want for Christmas is to skip church. And that really brought up the news because now we were talking about children and now we were talking about people. And this year we did a response to that billboard. We actually put billboards in Greensboro, North Carolina, and Colorado Springs. Really nice billboards of a picture of Santa Claus that says, it's okay to skip church. Just go ahead and skip church and be good for goodness sake. Now this is beautiful because it's about church, not Jesus and not God. It's about church. And this perfectly threads that line because it bothers all the people in those towns who care about people attending church, but they don't have anything to complain about because it says just skip church, be good for goodness sake. It's their song. Be good for goodness sake is their song. And they don't like it. So they go on news. So we have had a field day with this billboard. This nice billboard with Santa Claus on it. It doesn't say anything about dumping myths. It doesn't call religion a scam. But it beats the local Overton window because in those areas, everybody goes to church. And church is mandatory. And imagine if you're a closeted atheist in a place where skipping church is more hard than God is a scam and God is a myth. Think about that. The people are freaking out, and what are they freaking out about? Because Christianity has nothing to do with being good. It's all about faith. It's all about church. And if you're watching the news reports when they show you the graphic with the name of the organization and the website, and the preacher is up there saying it's not about being good, it's about going to church, and you're an atheist, where are you going to be pushed? It's an actual, we hit this line drive right down the middle with this one. And I'm really proud of how this is playing out on all the news stations in those local areas. No, it's not Fox News, but those local areas are getting a lot of press, and our membership is going up in those areas. Isn't that nice?
Excellent.
Yeah, Firebrand Atheism works, and that's why I hope everybody buys my book, Fighting God, an Atheist Manifesto for a Religious World. It's the first atheist manifesto. It's the first atheist book by a career atheist, that's me, that's been published by a major publisher in American history. The reviews are coming in very good. Haven't Meta rated it the #1 atheism book of the year, and I'm really proud of it. It's called Fighting God. You can get it at Amazon. You can get it at Barnes & Noble. Also, American Atheists is America's oldest 501c3 nonprofit organization for the non-religious community, and we kick ass, and we do it efficiently, and we do it transparently, and we are very, very effective and dedicated, and we deserve your support, and we deserve your membership. And that website is atheists.org. And Mark, thank you so much for being a long-term life member and a Silver Life member. I really appreciate your support, and tell Shannon I said hi. And everybody else, please join American Atheists, because we need and deserve your support, and frankly, you kind of need us.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, and one of these days I hope to be on your board of directors as well.
I would like that.
All right, well, Dave, it's been a really great interview. It's been always good talking to you. Miss you, haven't seen you much this last couple of years, so I'm glad to have you on.
Before we go, I want to challenge everybody. Before we go, I want to challenge everybody. You heard Dave talk about how important it is to say that you're an atheist. Not just, not believe and be apathetic and say, I'm against religion, but to say, I am an atheist. I''M, space A, space A-N, space atheist, exclamation point. Go on social media, type, I'm an atheist.
And
then
one of the ways
tag American Atheists and tag the Ramen Podcast on Facebook and Twitter.
Yes.
And post. Put that out there. Show everybody that you're proud, that you're not afraid to label yourself an atheist, because fear is the enemy, and if you're afraid to say it, then the religious side wins.
And yes. I got to tell you, when I finally realized what atheist means and that the word applied to me, I tell you, it wasn't but a matter of days before I realized that anti-theist also applied to me. And so that's how angry I was that I'd been lied to about the meaning of that word.
Yeah, I understand. I don't use anti-theist because that just clouds it. I use atheist, 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 and only atheist, and that's the word that's understood by 90% of the population.
Very good.
So thanks to Aaron for having me on the show. Thanks, Mark, as well, for having me on. I really appreciate it. Fighting God, American Atheists at atheists.org. Thanks a bunch.
And he's just closed the show for us. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.